Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a new series, hopefully with more consistent uploads than the favorite albums of all time series, which took like 4 months to do 10 videos or something. It's pretty wild. Um, as you will see from the title, we are counting down our favorite albums of 1965. Who are we, you may ask? I'm Tom, obviously. I'm joined again by Vanessa and Chris, who joined me for the Harry Nielsen ranking. You'll be seeing plenty of all three of us together, um, if you choose to watch the videos, that is. And yeah, we're kicking off in 1965. I know I did 1965 before um, with a different guest, and yeah, my list has changed slightly. So I thought we could have started with 66, but we may as well go back to where it really should be started and start afresh. And yeah, how did you guys find this? Vanessa, I guess I'll start with you. Overall thoughts on this, doing this series and on 1965.
Well, I'm excited to do the series. I'm going to mostly be going with things that I already know. I'm giving everything a fresh listen, but I'm not going to be doing much new listening. I actually thought that this year was probably going to be the easiest year because I thought I pretty well had a set list based on my ratings because I'd done a deep dive of the year last year, but I was wrong. Everything changed. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that, like just in a year, how everything changed. So.
Chris?
Uh, yeah, I have a lot to catch up on. Some of these were new to me. I definitely discovered a good amount. I knew some of the heavy hitters, of course, but I'm excited for the series because I feel like it's a chance for me to catch up um, on a lot of classics that I just somehow haven't gotten to yet. So, yeah, very excited. You've forced my hand, and now I must listen. So,
Yeah, I mean, it was willing. It was willing. Yeah, I think I'm obviously excited to do this. I think 1965 as a year kind of is the same as 66, where to me, picking the top five was tough, like in terms of the order, but there was not a crazy amount of depth, I don't think, especially compared to what we're going to run into from like 67 into the 70s. It's going to be insane. It's going to be wild having to pick lists. So, yeah, it's kind of a nice ease in, but still, like Vanessa said, it wasn't easy because, as you will see, changes have been made from my initial list. So I'll kick us off. Um, we'll rotate the orders for 66. Maybe Vanessa or Chris will start us off. So yeah, I have three honorable mentions to just list off quickly before we start. Um, I put "Spell on You" by Nina Simone, which was on my initial list at number 4, has dropped off. "Bringing It All Back Home" by Bob Dylan, also not making the list, and almost making it with a strong underdog effort after really rising in my estimations the past sort of 6 months or so since doing that first video. "Mr. Tambourine Man" by the Byrds. I'll consider that number 6. So, list proper. Number 5, "Going to a Go-Go" by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles was also my number 5 last time out. Really fun Motown album. The opening 3 tracks, the singles are just nuts. Like, that is an insanely good way to open an album. But also some good deep cuts in here, like "My Girl Is Gone," "Choosy Beggar," and "Fork in the Road." Just pretty fun Motown album. Number 4, new entry, "Help" by the Beatles. What was I doing sleeping on this album so much? This is a classic. It really is. Even though it's only like my 7th or 8th favorite Beatles album, it really just belongs on the list in a year like 65. You have the obvious classics like "Help," "Ticket to Ride," "Yesterday," plenty of good deep cuts. It's like a really swift, nice listen. And yeah, "Help" lands at number 4 for me. Number 3, I've mentioned him already, "Highway 61 Revisited" by Bob Dylan. Um, it's a classic for a reason. It's the first Bob Dylan album I heard. It was my introduction to him. For me, I think 2/3 of the album is classic, and the other 3 songs I'm not as big on personally. But those 6 songs I do love are enough to make me put it this high. This is one of the 3 albums I give a 9 from this year. But songs like From a Buick 6, Takes a Lot to Laugh, Takes a Train to Cry, and the title track, not as big on. But then it does have some of my favorite songs ever, like a Rolling Stone, and Desolation Row and Ballad of a Thin Man. So had to make the list. The top 2. My number 2 is Otis Blue by Otis Redding, which was my initial winner. The first time round, it has slipped out of gold. But I still love it. Like, it's pretty much a beginner's guide to soul music, moving renditions of already classics like My Girl and Wonderful World. And then he's just like, I'll write a couple originals to go with them, and they just happen to be Respect and I've Been Loving You Too Long, which have since become soul classics. It's pretty much a perfect entry point to the genre as far as I'm concerned, and unlucky to land in silver. But my winner is Rubber Soul by the Beatles. I didn't think it was going to win. In fact, I think the reason I didn't pick it the first time is because I knew, spoilers for future videos, the Beatles are going to go on a crazy run for me throughout the 60s of winning years. And I kind of wanted to give the shine to Otis, but I shouldn't be doing that. This is me, new series, new me. Just pick your favorite album. No messing about. And Rubber Soul is my favorite album of the bunch. It was my number 4 Beatles album, but they're one of my favorite bands ever. It's just so hard to argue with this track list. Nowhere Man, which this listen, I realized how incredible the bass line on that song is. I'm Looking Through You, Norwegian Wood, In My Life, just stacked. So got Going to a Go-Go at 5, Help at 4, Highway 61 at 3, Otis Blue at 2, and Rubber Soul takes the gold. Who wants to go next?
Okay. Pretty stacked list.
Thank you.
I can go. Okay, so I think we share a couple. Quick shout out to A Love Supreme and well, mostly just that. Maybe I'll think of another honorable mention. I mostly feel bad about that one. The rest of you can deal with it. My number 5 is Otis Blue. Always been kind of an Otis Redding fan, kind of casually, haven't really dove that deep, but knew his hits obviously, and this was just awesome. I think this is a really great record. Like you said, I think it really kind of solidifies him as a soul juggernaut. I think the covers are great, even Satisfaction. And I think the originals are just as awesome. So I think he really hits some great notes, and overall is very convincing as an all-time great. My number 4 is Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan. Hadn't heard this one in a while, so this was a good kind of revisit to Bobby D. I like this album a lot. It's it's not my favorite Bob Dylan record, but I do think obviously it has a lot of classics. He's kind of in this transition period, getting more kind of electric and a little more surreal. Definitely a fun one that I will come back to often. But it's not as good as my number 3, which is Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan, which is just really great. As I said, I'm due to listen to more Bob Dylan, but this project will probably illuminate me to more. But definitely, this was my favorite of the two. There's this awesome kind of duality or dichotomy between kind of the front half and the back half that I really like as a listening experience. I think almost every song to me is noteworthy. Favorites are, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Maggie's Farm, Love Minus Zero. I love Bob Dylan's 115th Dream. That's just fun. And, Mr. Tambourine Man. So to me, that's like an absolute stacked track list. I don't think there's really any stinkers on it. So that's a comfortable bronze for me in 1965. My number 2 is Pastel Blues by the great Nina Simone. Um, Nina was like on fire in 1965, by the way. And she probably didn't even give a shit. Can I say shit? I'm sorry. She probably didn't even care.
No, I say shit all the time. It's fine.
Okay, okay. You know, okay. Honorable mentions. I put a spell on you. That record also is very good. I think this one is a good bit better actually as a cohesive record. Um, Be My Husband is like the coolest intro track. It's very sparse, very kind of unique. Her voice just really shines through on it. Um, there's really no stinkers. Nobody knows when you're down and out. Trouble in Mind, Strange Fruit are all really great. And then I think Sinner Man at the end is just like the cherry on top. I mean, this is like an all-timer record. Just with that track alone. So it's 10 minutes. It's awesome. Just anyway, ties it all together. Nina Simone, great voice, very unique and in her delivery and her voice. So love it. And obviously my number one is Rubber Soul. I'm due for a full Beatles listen through, which this series will present me to, but traditionally this has been one of, if not my favorite Beatles records. It's full of songs that I've always liked, maybe more than, Sorry, but Revolver and Sergeant Pepper's and whatever. So, um, I like basically every song here. The last track, whatever. But yeah, you both gave me the yeah. The lyrics are kind of hard to digest, but still, I think it's so chock full of classics. Norwegian Wood, In My Life, just all of it. I I think it's hard for me to deny. It sounds a little cheesy being number one, but like you said, Tom, I listen to it again and I'm like, yeah, of course. Like there's nothing can surpass the greatness. Nina gave it a good run. I grew some appreciation for Bob Dylan, but I think Rubber Soul stands the test. So that's my number one.
That's interesting. Are we looking at a trifecta in episode 1? Could happen, but
We'll
yeah,
see.
I honestly wasn't expecting it to win for me. I thought Otis Blue had it in the bag just from what I thought in my head. But listening to it again, like maybe it was listening to it compared to the year rather than in the Beatles catalog. I was like, yeah, this is special. So yeah, more from the Beatles from me for sure.
Oh yeah. So I have several honorable mentions. So basically like a 6 to 10. So I'll do them in order from like 6 to 10. So I have the Beatles' Help is my number 6. Number 7 would be the Beach Boys' Today. Number 8 would be A Love Supreme. Number 9 would be Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. And number 10 would be Buck Owens's I've Got a Tiger by the Tail, which is a super solid country album from that time. Just immaculate, really, but hard to get in the top 5. So my number 5 is Bob Dylan's Bringing It All Back Home, which it's got a lot of undeniably classic songs here. We got Subterranean Homesick Blues, Mr. Tambourine Man, Maggie's Farm, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. But my favorite is actually It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. I love that song. But yeah, it's hard to really say too much about it because you both covered it already. It's a classic album. It's here for a reason. My number 4 is Otis Blue, which is actually not my favorite Otis Redding album, but it's still great and it's deserving of all the acclaim it gets. There are several covers on this album, of course, but I think they're all done well enough and uniquely enough to warrant this being considered a great album. Otis was amazing at bringing himself to his performances, and whether they're originals or not, he always inhabits them and makes them his own. So that's what makes it a step above. And his originals here are great. There's only 3, but they're Old Man Trouble, Respect, and I've Been Loving You Too Long, which are all like amazing classics on their own. So, and I love his version of You Don't Miss Your Water. That's awesome. My number 3 is Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds, another album with a lot of covers, but a lot of people sleep on the originals on this. People dismiss this for having a lot of covers, but they bring their own sound to it, and they've inspired so many people and an entire genre of music. So you really can't dismiss that. And the originals are among my favorites. it's pretty sad that they often get overlooked. I love I'll feel a whole lot better. You won't have to cry here without you. I knew I'd want you, and it's no use. They're all great, so can't lose there. My number 2. So we're not going to have a trifecta. My number 2 is Rubber Soul, which I really would have thought was my winner, but it turns out that it's not. It's super close with my actual winner, but I listened to them both together and I was like, nope, I got to make a change. When I was younger, this was in contention to be my favorite Beatles album. I've changed my mind over the years, but I still love it. It's still a 10. It's still a classic album. It's the opening notes of Drive My Car, you know you're in for something special for this whole album. And it's just banger after banger, as you both said. It does end on that slight sour note with Run for Your Life, but that's more just the lyrics. The song's still great. When I was listening to it, I was like, oh yeah, this people will dismiss this song, but it's still great. They're just overthinking it a little bit, I think. And my number 1 is one that absolutely blew me away. Highway 61 Revisited is my number 1. I actually had this as my second favorite Bob Dylan album of this year before for a long time. I don't know what changed, but when I put it on for this, I was just like, it's like I heard it for the first time. Like I just absolutely fell in love, even though I'd heard it before multiple times. It just absolutely blew me away. I don't know. So it's my number 1. And it was almost like I was hit by lightning by it. Like it was just like, holy shit, like I love this album, and I've played it like 6 times just in the last 2 weeks. Like a Rolling Stone is a classic, of course. A kind of a song I've always taken for granted a little bit, which is weird. But it hit me the right way this time. But I love the way it transitions into Tombstone Blues, which is actually my favorite. I love that song. The rest of the album has been elevated, of course, for this time around. I love the eerie Ballad of a Thin Man and how pretty Queen Jane approximately is. I think the title track is a lot of fun, and Desolation Row earns that entire 11 minutes that runs for. So yeah, that's my number 1.
I should have said my predictions before we started, but I kind of knew Chris would have Rubber Soul. I thought you would have Mr. Tambourine Man, Vanessa, number 1.
Oh no,
yeah, not quite.
Not totally crazy.
Wow, how interesting. Well, you can join us a couple of weeks from this video, and we'll be doing 1966. All 3 of us will be at the listening, and it'll be very interesting to see how we line up on that. Yeah, overall impressions of 1965, solid year. There's some good stuff. I think there's more depth in terms of the singles and the songs than the albums, because the album form was still just coming to be a little bit. So yeah, there'll be more difficult lists to make, I think, but obviously we had a lot in common, which I think is worth noting now that isn't going to be the case with every year. There are some years where I think our tastes, kind of why I like this trio for this series, because we all have our different biases that don't necessarily apply to the other 2, or maybe apply to one and not the other, so it's going to be kind of interesting. So yeah, any other closing thoughts on 65?
Well, I've been deep diving 1963, of course, sort of at the same time for another project. And it's just so amazing what a different vibe from 1963 to 1965 is. It's 2 years, but like it feels like 10 almost. Like it's crazy. That's one thing I just really noticed doing the 2 together.
Yeah. And what's strange is I think 1967 is going to be yet another strong cultural shift just 2 years later from that. So
yeah, definitely.
The 60s.
Exciting stuff. So join us again a week from now. There'll be the songs list, which we're going to record straight away. So we'll know our songs picks right now, but you'll have to wait a week. And hopefully we can keep up that pace of at least a video for this series every week. So we'll see how long that lasts. Thank you very much for watching, and catch us for another video soon.